Well, here we are for another episode of No Neutral Moments, and I'm excited to have my friend Laura Roman. I was thinking this morning, how do I introduce Laura Roman? My friend, my cohort at camp, church friend, businesswoman. I mean, how long have we known each other now? 20 years?
Well, for sure. I mean, I was part of Stonegate
Yeah,
since 2002 when my family moved here.
yeah.
So I've known you at
In one
least
way.
21 years,
Yeah,
whether or not
yeah.
you knew I was out there listening to your words or not.
Wow.
And
this
then it
goes
seemed like once
fast.
our world started
Yeah,
colliding, they just did
a
over
lot
and
of stuff.
over and over again.
So a little bit of background. Laura and I probably spent most of our time working with youth together. And through an incredible run of doing youth camps. I mean, what an incredible run. I think about the literally thousands of kids we took to camp.
Absolutely.
And it was just, and we had this mantra, we'd take any kid and every kid.
Absolutely.
And that was those turned into some of the hardest weeks of our lives. But you look back and I still meet kids to this day,
Most rewarding. No matter how difficult, how sleep deprived we were, no matter how the challenge just seemed so severe at that moment, and then
Yeah.
you see them years later, and they still remember that week
Yeah.
that they had once a year, and with just all of these adults pouring into them, and where they were separated from the rest of the world
Yep.
and could just focus on their relationship and their relationship with Jesus.
Yeah. And just taking their phones from them.
Yes.
And now I've probably done, I bet I've done 30 plus weddings of kids that when we were at camp with them, you would think, if you get out of high school, I'll be surprised.
Right.
And they're just these amazing young adults.
Yes.
And the investment you made in their lives was incredible. And Laura was the CEO of camp. And some of us just showed up and did our deal, and you ran the show. It was something else. When was your last year to do camp?
My last year was 21. So
21.
we skipped the year of COVID. And then I did 21, and that was my last year to do that. Although I'm on the board of the camp.
Oh, are you?
Still,
Okay, I didn't
where
know
we
that.
went to Glorietta. I've been on the board since 2016.
Wow.
And so
okay.
I still have the opportunity to be involved with youth at camp in Glorietta and what's being done there.
It's really cool.
But I don't know if you know this, but how I got involved, I had never done youth camp before. And the two youth leaders at that time, were Jeff and Dustin. And I was trying to figure out how to go to camp. I was like, well, I don't know if I should be a small group leader. And then I talked to Leon, and
Yes.
he was like, oh, well, I could use you on our safety team. And so I went to Jeff, and I was like, well, maybe I want to be on the safety team instead of being a group leader. I'm not really sure, because really at the end of the day, I just did not want to sleep in bunks.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I'm following.
And so and he was like, well, hold on, I might have another role for you. And I was like, okay, well, I'll hold out. But I was like, but I really think I want to do this other thing. And because I was like, I just am not sure I want to be a small group leader yet. I've never been to camp. And then he came back to me and he said, what I really want you to be is this camp CEO role.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it all clicked. As much fear as I had about being a small group leader or doing some of these other things, I was like, oh, well, I can do that.
Do this.
That
Yeah.
I was like, I can do this. And so started that in 2013 and did it until 2021. And I will say to anybody, I feel like the camp that we had was about as textbook
Oh.
perfect and wonderful and,
Yep.
as any youth camp could
And
be.
it was a medium-sized business.
It was. Well, it was like taking a small town
Yeah.
out of Midland on all of the charter buses and moving everything that it took
Yes.
to
get
run
there.
a small town for a week.
Yeah. A town of, with all adults and kids involved, close to 2,000 people.
Right.
I remember we'd have something in the neighborhood of close to 30 buses
Right.
pulling out. That was just a circus.
Correct.
And yeah, you're right. It was an expensive business, but in the end, the investment was huge.
Right.
We could literally say, without exaggerating, there are thousands of kids who are probably living the life they never thought they were going to live, and it was just an incredible time. Exhausting, but
Right.
incredible.
For me, one of the most proud things I've ever had the ability to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah, not many people were doing camp that size and with that type of investment. And we would only charge kids this minimal amount to get there, and the church would invest hundreds of thousands of dollars just to make sure kids could go. So we look back, and that was seemed like yesterday, but it was a long time ago as well, and it was a great experience.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm proud of our fearlessness to take any kid that
yeah.
could go. You know,
Yeah.
it's so easy to say, well, let's only take the kids that behave, or the
Mm-hmm.
kids that can pay, or the kids that we know and we know their families. And we were just, if God called them and put them in our path and was going to allow them to go to camp, we were going to figure out a way to take them
Mm-hmm.
there, and we were going to deal with whatever issues came out that week.
And there were many.
There were
many. I'll tell a story. Our first year at camp, this is before you got involved, was way back in Siloam Springs, Arkansas. And there was a young lady there, I won't mention her name, but we knew we were having some problems. And already we were the largest church to show up at that camp. We brought over 200 kids, and no other church brought that many kids to that event. And I'd heard about this young lady and found out that this was the first week she hadn't had cigarettes or nicotine, and so she was wigging out. So I told the group, I said, well, I'm going to go to Walmart and I'm going to go buy some nicotine patches. And they were like, this is church camp. And I said, yeah, it is. And this is what you do. So I went and bought her nicotine patches. And then we went to her dorm room and she said, listen, I bought all these drugs. So we're like, well, let's flush them down the toilet. So now we knew we have rehab that week. Mm-hmm. And long story short, we pretty much kind of adopted her in, Cindy and I did. And she would be over at our house quite a bit, sleeping on the couch and finishing out high school. And then we walked with her through some tough road college. We checked her into rehab, and fast forward, did her wedding. She now has, I think she has 4 children.
Wow.
And we stay in touch with them. We go see them in Fort Worth. They love the Lord and they're doing great things. So, you know, that's a long time ago.
Right.
But it's comes with the territory.
Absolutely.
And it's quite rewarding. And we probably have hundreds of those stories we can tell.
We do.
You know, we had a full police force at camp.
That's right.
And they stayed busy.
That's right.
And there were times when we had to call in the state police. And you just go, wow, did that really happen? Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And it was worth it. So you're at Weaver.
Yes.
Give everybody an idea of your title, what you do, and then I'm going to segue into maybe a little bit of a hot topic.
Okay. So Weaver is a full-service accounting firm. We were mostly based in Texas. However, in the last couple of years, our growth has just been incredible. And so while we are still a Texas-focused firm in some respects, I mean, our headquarters are in Houston now. We have offices in San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Midland, which is always a surprise because it's a smaller market, and Austin. We also have offices now in New York City. We have offices in Los Angeles, Pasadena, Oklahoma City, and we've got very strategic locations of where we're looking to growing to next. And as you know now, we also have offices and staff that or teams that we're working with that are in India.
Wow.
And so my role is I'm on the tax side, and I am a regional partner in charge. So I'm in charge of the South region, which really is a very flexible South.
Yeah.
It's Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Midland. I've now adopted Pasadena since they're a new acquisition for us. So they'll be under my region just until they're up and going, and we really can't establish a West Coast region as we're going up there. We also just recently acquired a firm in Portland. And then I also have our India office.
Okay.
And so that's taken me there several times in the last year to travel to India and to work with them, train them, get them so that they're just as much a part of our working staff and team as any of our other offices.
So in India, is the primary language English that you deal with? How do you do this?
Oh my gosh. India, I don't think people are even aware of. They may hear about the size of India. You know, the size of India is the population, right? I mean,
Right.
it's essentially the size of like a little bit more than 2 Texas.
Wow.
But yet it's 1.6 billion people. The population is higher in India than it is in China.
Wow.
But yet when you look at area-wise, you know,
It's
China's
two
a huge.
Texases.
Yes.
Wow.
And India is almost like all of these regions that have their own cultures, their own languages, their own traditions, their own religions. And so when we're working there, you know, what we have found is they have 2 main languages, even though there's like 1,600 languages spoken in India.
Are they languages or dialects?
They're languages.
Wow.
Now, there could be small dialect differences in certain regions, but they are specifically actually languages.
Wow.
And so between Hindi and English are the main two languages. And then the rest of them become very regional, state, city, village specific. And so when we're there in my first trip, I was really surprised by how easy it was to get around just by English. All of the street signs are in English. When you're at the airport, it's in English. I mean, now they also have everything in Hindi also, but the store signs have English translations on them, and it's generally the main words, and then underneath it is the translation. And obviously, you have to get used to the accents, but funny enough, they have to get used to ours, especially being from Texas. And so while they're used to English, from what they listen to on TV or even BBC English, Texas definitely has our own words, our own accents, how we say things, that they're having to pay as close of attention to us as we are to them. But it doesn't take long to get in the swing of it. And it's
now, is a lot of the English from British colonial holdover?
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of the way that they spell things, and
it's very British, so to speak. UK.
Yeah, and a lot of their English words are the British words for things.
Okay. All right. So where is the office in India?
So we have 3 locations. Our main one is in Chennai. All of them are in the south of India.
So
Chennai is on the east side of India on the water. Okay. So it's a big seafood place. So, I mean, you always hear about when you're in India, a lot of it is vegetarian. But where we go, there's also, there's a lot of incredible seafood. And the food in India is just amazing. If you open yourself up to it and really become part of the country and really just diving into their culture, it really is just an incredible experience. And the food is wonderful. But we're in Chennai, and then we also have teams that are in Bangalore and Coimbatore.
That's all along the south.
Yes, and that's all kind of, Chennai's on the water, and then as you get into Bangalore, it's in the middle. But and these cities, Coimbatore, or not Coimbatore, but Bangalore and Chennai are both bigger than New York City. So they're places that nobody's ever really heard of here.
Right.
And yet you look at them, and the population is larger than anything that we have in the United States.
What drives the market that has a weaver want to be in India?
So the accounting profession, similar to the IT profession, similar to anything that is a heavy STEM type industry, is
technology,
finding the need.
Engineering.
Correct.
Right.
Is really finding a strong need to partner with India. The accounting profession is mainly partnering with India, but then there's also the Philippines, some in Venezuela, but you're seeing a lot of these going outside the United States for a couple of reasons. One is it allows you to have, especially in the Philippines and India, it allows you to have a 24-hour workday.
Oh, wow.
So they're 10 and a half right now hours ahead of us, which is so strange, the half hour. They're 10 and a half, and then when we go back into our time change, they'll be 11 and a half hours. So we can literally finish our day, hand off the work product. They'll continue to work on it. We've got some overlap where, we're having to work early mornings or later evenings, and they are too, so that we have communication time. But we're able to keep this 24-hour work cycle. We're also, you see that these countries are very strategic in that they know how to speak English.
Right.
And they have very strong communication skills. They're very highly educated. Now, you look at India with the population that they have at 1.6 billion, the amount of people in the labor force is just huge compared to the United States, where we're seeing less people that are graduating with the certifications and requirements to do the level of service work that we need to do in the United States.
So I didn't expect this to go this direction, which is great. Literally, so you can keep a 24-hour data circle going.
Yes.
That's one of the most strategic options.
Correct. Absolutely.
Wow. And what other industries other than the accounting world is that? I guess AI, I guess technology. Like
technology is huge. I would say technology was probably the first one that saw the opportunity there. And as they started building, because they could build the infrastructure with making sure that, they had Wi-Fi, that they had computer servers, that they had, encryption, that they had the privacy and protection.
Right.
Those things started being put in place on the IT side so that when something like accounting came in, where it is so important that we have data security,
Yep.
they built that. And I would say another area that's huge in that area that kind of went off of the technology was healthcare. Just because of the mass amounts of data,
Okay.
that they're having to work with and go through in order to manage large healthcare systems. And so it was a very natural, easy transition. Now, I will say the easy transition is how to make it work. Now, getting clients, getting even ourselves wrapped around the idea of working with people in a different country, because a lot of times you immediately go back into this very, I would definitely say, mindset of like, well, I just want to protect what's mine. You know, I want only people that I know to have access to this data. And so we have to make sure we put the privacy in place, that we're doing everything that it takes to do that. But there's also this mindset of like, people think of it as a call center, and that people
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and people aren't educated, or they don't have the skills to do this, and that is absolutely a lie. When I hear from our team members about the schools that they go to and what it takes to qualify and to apply, because there's so many people trying to go to these schools, that they are the best of the best.
You're saying going to post-secondary school.
Correct. Right.
But their primary school's probably a
their
little more
primary
intense.
schools are right. They have very strong primary schools, and then going into the post-secondary schools that give them the requirements to have an accounting degree, a medical degree, IT degrees. Very small spaces for the population of this country. So the ones that are getting in are
best of the best.
The best of the best.
Do you think
and they are hungry for opportunity, and they have just this very strong desire to please, and incredibly ethical, and so it's just been that's why it's been working. The larger firms have been doing it for 20 years, and then my size firm, the middle market firms, really in the last 5 years have just seen as our number of graduates from the universities and how it's become more and more difficult to obtain your CPA exam, those type of things, where we need more people in order to fit the demand of our profession.
Do you think they are competing in a way that, compared to America, worries you, that our lack of competing, so to speak, for jobs and excellence in jobs? How do you see that?
Well, I mean, just even thinking about being prepared today for the conversation, and thinking about what it means to be in a globally healthy, competitive environment. To me, to take anything for granted and to feel like you don't have to put forth your best effort is never going to be optional. And if you know that you are in a position that you're qualified, that you're talented, that you're engaged in, then you want the strongest team around you, regardless of what position you're at. It's the people that don't want to put forth that effort that are scared. Yeah,
that's right. And do you run into more scared people this side of the ocean than you do over there?
Yes, but not on my team, because they don't belong on my team if they're that way. I mean, you know me over the years. I'm not a hard person to work with, but I certainly want people to be fully engaged and to understand that it takes skills, talents, traits to do better, and that the more that we all contribute, the more we all build value for each other. And if somebody feels like they have to only do it themselves, or they're scared of building up somebody else, or promoting somebody else, or teaching somebody else, that's really probably the biggest one right there.
What do you mean by that?
They're not willing to invest in enhancing somebody else's skills. Like, I have a certain expertise, and in order to make sure that I protect myself, I'm going to keep that for myself. If that is somebody's attitude, I don't have a place for them. Right. As opposed to, I have this experience, God has given me this experience, or maybe an aptitude to do something, and I need to make sure that I'm sharing that with others, because we'll all be better as a result of it. So if I have any team members that don't see things that way, I don't really have a place for them.
How many people directly answered to you? How many people are you leading?
In my offices, if you were to add them up, I probably have, gosh, 300 to 400.
Wow. It's a big team.
It is. It is. But I mean, it's certainly not me. I mean, when you say directly answer to me, I'm a very organizational structure person, right? I have like 8 people that answer to me. Yeah. And then those 8 people have, their people that answer to them. And we just make sure that we keep as we get to our younger people or our less experienced people is really the word I want to say. It's a smaller line of who is in charge of them and who's investing them. I think if you have a pool of inexperienced people or newer people to the profession and they all have one boss and that person has 30 people, then you're doing a disservice to the whole thing. I mean, there needs to be maybe 3 people that each manager is truly supervising and managing.
I'm seeing that a lot. I'm seeing more and more of a smaller cohort.
Correct.
So to speak.
Right.
But a much more focused and much more intense cohort. And then the big team of 25 or 30 that you can't keep up with.
Yeah, you can't keep up with it. You have lost people in there. You can't keep up with people that are becoming disengaged. Yeah. I read a lot of stories about the people that are the quiet quitters. I think now there's this thing about hashtag lazy job or whatever it is, just things like that. And I'm not reading about it because I want to be intrigued. I want to know what the signs are that and what's behind that. Why does somebody want that? And what caused them to feel like that was their only option?
What do you think those are?
I don't think that they're in a situation where they're thriving, obviously. I don't think that they understand their purpose and their value with their company or where they're employed. I don't think that when they took the job or whoever hired them, that they made sure it was a right fit. I think if you take that time up front, whether you're doing the interview or whether you're the one that's being interviewed, to make sure that this isn't just a job or I'm taking this because it pays me $5,000 more than my current job or whatever it is, that you're really looking at, is this an organization I can thrive in? And I know that there's a lot of stories about and anecdotes out there about, students that are coming out of school and they expect to have so many different jobs in the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. But the side of that, like on my side, when I'm hiring somebody and I look at their resume, I'm certainly not somebody that judges purely on a resume. I want to know their personality. But if I've seen that they've just been job hopping, I'm not interested in them. I won't even do the interview because they're always going to be looking for a better deal. And there's always a better deal. Always. But that doesn't mean...
Doesn't mean the grass is greener.
Absolutely. The grass isn't. Yeah. It's what you're putting into it.
Yeah. What do you... I'm getting further and further away from where I want to go, but this is intriguing me. When you're interviewing, if we have young people listening to and watching the podcast, what are you watching for and listening for the most in an interview?
I want to know why they're there to talk to me. I want to know that they've done their own study of the firm, of the job requirements. I want to know why they chose this as a profession.
What's the best answer you get when they ask that question?
Well, the best answer is the truth.
Yes.
There isn't a formal, if I hear this is the buzzwords. It's usually what brought them to it and what was that aha moment that let them know that this is something that they wanted to pursue. That it wasn't something that, my friends told me this is good, or I was good at math, so I did accounting. Okay, well... And what else? What about when you were in your classes? If there's nothing else more to that, or my parents always told me this was a stable job, something like that. It is. I mean, there will always be accounting, and there is a lot of stability, and you can do it everywhere.
Right.
But even explaining that, about my opportunities that are out there, I may not know today. Being a young graduate, in fact, even me, I'm 50 years old. I have no idea what the accounting profession is going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But I'm excited to be a part of that.
How has chat impacted the accounting world?
Right now, it's just now making, I would say in the last couple of years, it's making its way into it. And people are realizing, what is the difference between, can I put a question in and get a quick answer? Which you can, because I think what's great about that is it gives you a basic understanding of where to start. That's not going to work when you're talking to the IRS. That's not going to work when you're actually talking to a client that is needing expertise for you to say, well, I typed this into Chat GPT and this way is where I got my answer.
Right.
A lot of research services now are going into AI as to how to formulate the content, but ultimately it's always our responsibility to validate and confirm the facts and interpret it. Right. That's exactly right. I mean, because really all that it is just an accumulation of all the information out there.
Right.
That's all that it is. Wrong, right, it's just an accumulation of information.
Not wisdom or intuition or anything like that.
No, not at all.
Right.
They don't know the personal circumstances. They don't know all of, they don't know the personalities at stake. They don't know what the goals are of the business or the person that you're trying to help.
One more sort of global business question. I don't know the exact size of the company. I can tell you. I know who I work with, and I know trends that I'm seeing. And one of the trends I keep seeing is an inability to strategically think forward because everything is moving so fast. And these are good businesses. They appear solid. The balance sheet looks good. Their P&Ls look good, but they take retreats, they do management retreats, they do all these things, and then they just get right back into the loop, so to speak. And when you tell them somebody's going to have to slow down and do nothing but strategically think, what I'm beginning to see, and I had this conversation with a client over the weekend, there is this emergence of possibly even the profession within the companies of nothing but the thinker. The person who just knows the business, roams the business, and is able to sit down with a respected voice to the board or the management team and say, you need to see this, you need to see that. How do you see that playing out? It just seems to me everything's moving so fast, and you can think you're successful, but if you don't just have a meditative ability, so to speak, about you, you're not going to be aware of what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have all of these new chief chief operating officer, everything that goes down from innovation officer, there probably needs to be a role for a chief strategy officer. And that is their role, is to make sure that the strategy, that the vision, that what it was built on, where it is today and where everybody wants it to go is on course.
Yeah.
And then also constantly adapting to what the new challenges or opportunities are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we go back to our church time together. I think one of the biggest things that helped us in the early days was we kept an eye on outside the walls. What's going on outside? What we do inside is really only a small part of what we do. But a lot of church organizations forget what's going on outside. And you think you're doing the right things because Sunday's working, but you might actually be losing influence in the outside. And I'm seeing that play out in not the smaller companies who are driving and pushing and just trying to establish, but it's the larger ones who the balance sheet or whatever it might be causes them to think we're doing good, but they don't understand the dynamic of what you said just a minute ago. By the way, it's a 24-hour workday because we can establish something in India that can help us do it 24 hours. How's that going to impact us?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you work with companies that think that way, but I don't know the number, the cap number for these companies, but they're not small. They're not, mega, but man, it's a dangerous place.
It is. Well, and I think, everybody says, well, then we need to have more meetings. And of course there's
terrible.
Right. You have this agenda that's very project oriented versus being strategy or whatever that really is talking about your true opportunities and challenges and doing a true assessment of where that is and what needs to change or taking advantage of something that's out there that maybe isn't on your current horizon. And if you just free yourself from being so project driven, you start seeing a 24-hour work cycle or these other opportunities that...
It's crazy. And to have that meeting where you can rumble, so to speak, is a small group of people in your company. You think these people are tougher than they are, and then you get in a room and, as you know, you find out you're not as tough as I thought you were. And so, which is not your problem. So let me go into this question. You're a woman in an area of leadership with global responsibilities. At the risk of whatever could happen here, what are the challenges of being a woman in the 21st century in I'm going to just say, a still holdover chauvinism culture for the most part?
Oh, absolutely.
what are the challenges? How do you deal with it? Let's just open that can of worms.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's pretty much been my whole profession and all of my experience. When I started the accounting profession in the early 90s, it was definitely that way. I mean, it was all of the partners in accounting firms were male, their wives stayed at home. So you didn't even really have a whole lot of role models if you wanted to move past a certain level within the organization. The other thing was all of our clients were all owned by men. You know, what I was lucky enough early on was to have a lot of men that didn't care that I was female and involved me in the process and developed relationships with me where they mentored me.
That is lucky.
Yes.
That was who were some of those leaders?
Lots. I mean, I would even start as early. I mean, I tell a lot of people one of my first mentors here in Midland was Bobby Burns.
Wow.
You know, I've known Bobby since I was in 4th grade when my family moved here, and he was just somebody that always believed in me. I had a couple of principals that were not the type that only knew the athletes and the kids that got in trouble, and actually understood that there were women that needed encouragement, especially since I was, my skills were on the math and the STEM side of things, and that just to keep telling me I could do it. You know, I wasn't from a family that was a professional service side. My parents were landscapers. I mean, I had wonderful parents and they owned a business and stuff, but they certainly weren't on the professional service side of things. And I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I had people just sort of guide me through that process. I had great professors when I was at Baylor that also helped me. But then when I got out into the workforce, I asked a lot of questions. I was always present. And that word present to me is something I think about all the time, especially now that we live we're in a time in the workforce where people are working hybrid or they may be working from home. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I love the opportunity and flexibility that we have to do that, but it doesn't mean you can't be present.
Yeah. Push more into being present. Give me some examples of what you did that was unexpected.
I ask questions.
Right.
I know that doesn't sound like a big deal. I talk to partners. I talk to people that I wanted to learn from. You know, I would go into their office and just ask them questions and develop relationships with them. When I met clients that own businesses that I was intrigued by, if there is one thing a business owner loves to talk about, it's the success that they have and the business that they have created.
Right.
And so many times I see a lot of women that just sort of still take this role of kind of sitting in the corner, and they're, you know, they're very minuscule in their appearance, and they just sort of disappear. And sometimes you just have to. I have been in some rooms, especially when I was earlier and younger, with some people I was incredibly intimidated by, and I just had to take a deep breath and be involved. Now, I did not want to be boisterous. I did not want to be obnoxious in that meeting and take over. But I wanted to be present. I wanted to be involved. And I've never once ever thought that I had to act like the boys. I'm comfortable being in a room full of men where I'm the only woman in there, but never once do I say, oh, I'm just like the guys. I know I'm not like the guys. My experience, I am a woman. I look like a woman. Everything that I project myself out to be, other than the fact that I have probably a stronger personality than what most people expect from women, is that's who I am. And I don't have to drop the F-bomb for people to think that I'm, that I know what I'm talking about or those type of things. But yet I've always felt respected. When I did my first trip to India, I think I told you, and it was around the same time that you were doing your Dubai trip, but we took a trip to Oman during that and had a business meeting there. And I was a little bit... I didn't know what to expect. That was probably the one place, that...
Well, that's a little different. I mean, there's a lot of cultural stuff going on. When we were in Dubai, I'm asking questions. What do I need to do?
Correct.
I'm not sitting like I'm sitting right now with my legs crossed.
That's right. You don't want to show the bottom of your foot. Right. And then I'm like, where do I have to cover my head? And I was fine with that where it was appropriate.
Right.
Because I wanted to be respectful for the culture there. So in no way I was like, oh, I'm an American woman. I need to be able to, present myself like that all the time. I wanted to be completely respectful, whether I'm in India, Oman, Dubai, wherever I am, with what I want to always project myself respectfully. But when we were in Oman, we were meeting with oil companies. And so it was not only Oman, but it was also people that work in the oil business. And that's obviously the industry that drives everything there.
Right.
And they were wonderful. You know, there were a couple of things that I just had to be prepared for. One, I didn't have to cover my head when we were in the business meetings. That was something that I asked ahead of time, and they said no. I mean, really, as long as I was not in a mosque or a religious place, then that was fine. They wouldn't shake my hand, but they always opened the door for me. Whenever we sat down to meet in the conference room, they always looked me in the eyes. They always made sure I was taken care of, you know, and they were doing everything that they could do to show respect for me and make sure I felt comfortable. And I asked my questions, and I did what I would normally do, and I was fully engaged in the conversation and very pleasantly surprised by, again, if we just try to understand and show respect for each other and still be present, that even when you think you are the one that's going to stand out as not being, you know, nobody's going to pay attention to me or they're not going to want to hear from me, that was not the case at all.
When you said you asked questions, how important is the discipline of learning to ask good questions at the right time?
Well, I think asking questions is the most important, period.
Yeah.
You know, I love to talk, but generally that's not what I'm there for. You know, if I'm asked a question, I will reply in general, but you know, I am a service provider, and in order for me to provide the best service, I need to understand what the needs of that person is. I need to understand what they do. Once they then lay everything out and ask for, now what do you think? You know, it's my time. Yeah. But I need to collect as much information, as much data as I can. And that also has been along my career, even in how I develop myself. You know, I have to ask questions of what people's lives are like, what sacrifices did they have to make, what opportunities did they get as a result of that, what are the tough decisions that they had to make, especially people that I really wanted to learn from and emulate things that they had done in their lives. Yeah. And then there's no way you can do it. I mean, observing is great, but you also have to ask the tough questions and be comfortable with doing that.
What's the hardest meeting, maybe not hardest meeting, a meeting you can think back on and think, this is one that maybe taught me more or was really influential for me? Can you think of maybe a season or meetings or maybe a time where you thought, okay, this is sort of a game changer for me? I'll give you an example. When my trips and travels to Washington, D.C., there were a couple of meetings where I realized, okay, I'm in the room with people far more educated than I am, various different areas of worldwide experience. But like you just said, and we share a similar mind style, a whole nother topic. I usually sit in meetings and take all kinds of notes and listen and listen and listen until I feel like, okay, I'm ready for anything you're going to bring my way. But having to learn, if you're listening correctly, noting correctly, and thinking wisely, when the time comes, you better be ready to speak and not be intimidated by all this. And I just remember it was those meetings, sitting with, you know, ambassadors and others, realizing it doesn't matter who's in the room. You got to know what you know and believe in yourself and go after it, but be ready. So how about you? What was a season where you thought, I'm turning a corner here?
Well, the one that I'm going to bring up probably is a little bit different than that, but I have one that's similar to that. But I would just say where I had to be the most vulnerable. Because as a woman in my position, I've always tried to hide the vulnerability. And as I became more and more the leader or the one that people had to, that they were reporting to, I had to say, okay, it's time to be vulnerable and admit my mistakes, or say I'm sorry, or listen to somebody and not be defensive about the decisions I made.
And then not interpret that as the woman the weak woman?
No, it's the total opposite, because for so many years I have built my career as, I don't think I've ever been in a room where I've ever been interpreted as the weak woman in there. So I'll just be honest with
No,
that.
I can fully affirm that.
Yeah, I mean, it's by the time I was ready to be involved and engaged in meetings, I felt very confident in that, and so I never felt intimidated. Essentially, I mean, I may have felt like I didn't have, that I wasn't good enough to be in there internally, but I certainly didn't necessarily project that, and I still was able to be present and to be involved in the meetings. But I've always thought that I was in tune with everybody's feelings also, and that I was a good leader. And times when we had to have meetings where I had to listen to maybe how I would call it steamrolling. Nobody's ever said that, but that's my self-interpretation of it, is where I steamrolled people and I didn't listen to them because I thought, well, in my experience, or I know these things are going on, so I didn't take the time to explain to them the decisions that I had made, and left them feeling like their feelings, their opinions were not valued. And when I had to sit on the other side of that, because I am a very emotional woman, but I've hid a lot of that vulnerability, making sure that people didn't necessarily see that. And then having to say, I hear you, you were right, or maybe we should have rethought that decision, or I should have taken the time to talk to you about that. Those are the meetings for me that when you say that meeting that's just really hard, where I have to, it's now my turn to talk. And my words are, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's
humble. It's humility.
Yes, it is. It is, because I've never wanted to hurt anybody. I've never wanted to in any way make somebody feel like they are not valued.
Yeah.
And so to hear that I may have done that to somebody, and sometimes it's just because at the time I didn't have the time.
Right.
And I hate that, because I should have gone back and I should have allowed the opportunity for them to feel comfortable at that time to come and talk to me about it, as opposed to it festering with them. And they feel like, that I'll argue with them or whatever it is.
In your makeup as a leader, though, was it sometimes hard for you to understand in humility, why are these people so offended or so hurt?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the challenge.
Yes.
Is because you and I personally are like, we're just duking it out. We're just having a meeting. Get over it. Don't be so weak.
Yes.
But the humility to go, wait a minute, I'm actually being a jerk.
And I hurt you.
Yeah.
Or I made you feel like your opinions didn't matter.
Right.
And that's never the intention.
Right.
That's to me, when you ask that question, that's immediately what I went to, and I thought, okay, I've got to answer that honestly.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can, what someone would interpret as trying to hurt me, I would take as, oh, that's a challenge. Okay,
I'm up for the debate.
Let's go. Let's go. But I have to understand there are people wired differently.
Right.
And what I would interpret as an invitation to a challenge to them is, you don't respect me.
Right.
And that's a lesson we share in common.
And they don't have the personality to or the confidence or just the ability to think on their feet to go into that challenge with you. Because to me, it's not like I'm here to tell you why I'm right. I love that challenge, because to me, if you were to open up with me that way, we're going to get to the best answer.
Right.
I've got my thoughts and I'm really strong on them, and you have yours. And somewhere in here, we're going to find the best answer. But most people are not willing to.
At least
they
50%.
See that as battle.
Easy.
Yes.
Easy 50%.
Oh, more than 50%.
Yeah. Maybe 75.
Yes.
And that's why I said with companies, you have to, who's the right person, because more people are defensive and can get hurt. And that's not a bad thing. That's who they are.
Right.
Than those who just are willing to put it all on the table and say, let's just duke this out. And in the end, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If you're right, you're right, vice versa. And as my friend says, when we're done, we'll go have a beer. I mean, it's like but man, it's a small room.
Yes.
That you can do that in.
I think if you were looking at the amount of people, right, that feel like they are ready to go in a quick environment, head to head, to keep feeding on that and growing, and to be able to be in that sort of an active debate, it's just there's not many of us.
And if you think you're there and you think that's the room, you better wait a little longer and check it a little more, because if you start down that road of thinking, I have my aggressive fighting team You know, and I've used the analogy, you know how much I love college football. I was a quarterback, and you could be with your team and yelling at each other and mad at each other because the objective was shared. We got to play well and score touchdowns. And you think that I know that transfers into the marketplace. You get in the marketplace and find out, no, these people aren't that tough.
Right.
And then you're navigating cultures in India and
Right.
in other places that, okay, what's the right words? What's the right phrases? How do I show respect? I think every leader needs that group of 3 or 4 that you can just sit down with and go, okay, let's get after this.
Right.
But it's hard to find. It's
Right.
really hard to find. I forgot that you graduated from Baylor. For some reason, I thought you were an Aggie too. But
No, husband's Aggie,
daughters
Aggie.
an Aggie.
Yeah.
Yes. You get invited to a senior level class at the Mays Business School at A&M or the business school at Baylor. And it's a room full of women, young ladies. And they've asked you for your top 3, top 5 list of how to be a successful professional woman. What are you going to tell them?
Every time a woman or even a man comes to me, but especially women where they're looking to be mentored, the first thing that we usually work on is identifying who they are. And that can be, you know, obviously if it's in a context where we share the same faith, then we can talk about, you know, what you were designed, called, and gifted to be, and we can use that those words. We can delve into that. In the work world or in the more secular world, we talk about values and what your brand is. And a lot of people originally may just roll their eyes and go, oh, this is another conversation about values and brand. That is not true, though.
Yeah.
It's like, no. I'm not going to tell you what your values are. I'm not going to tell you your brand, but I actually have exercises for us to go through to help you define that. Because what you're going to find through the end of it is once you know you, it's so much easier for you to find what fits in your life, the boundaries that you want, the times you say yes, the times you say no, what is going to keep you energized every morning when you wake up and you're excited to live your life for what you've been designed, called, and gifted to be. And so it's not just words. I mean, I actually help them through the exercise of defining their values, which are very different. Like, don't tell me what your company's values are or what they went through. I want yours. And let's talk through. I mean, it may start off that we have, 50 words that we're working with, and we're going to narrow those down. And we're actually going to talk about each one of those, why you said yes when I brought out that word, why you said no so quickly, to get an understanding. So you're doing something that you probably have never done early on, and that study yourself and who you are.
Okay, what material are you using? Is this stuff you made up?
Just stuff that I've, I mean, I've gone through so many assessments, so many different leadership classes, so many different marketing type things, that it's just something that over time I guess I probably went through that exercise myself during COVID, that I accumulated a lot of reading and a lot of material that I felt was very relevant to me. And now I've just started sharing it with other people.
Yeah. I'm thinking, before you even go any further, the power of how many people have never assessed, what do I really believe in?
Right.
What's really going to define me? What am I going to say yes to? What am I going to say no to? I can sit in my briefcase right here. When I wrote my original personal constitution, it was October 21st, 1991. And I carry it with me everywhere I go. And it's, people say, do you pray about stuff? I'm like, well, actually, I've spent many, many decades praying through these 13 guiding principles of my life. So if it doesn't fit in that, I'm wasting the Lord's time with my prayer. So this idea of these young women who are so influenced, so many, by culture, and it made me think of a question real quick. When you're interviewing, what do you pay attention to as far as their social media?
Oh, I always look at social media.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different things I'm looking at. How easily are they influenced? That to me probably is one that I look at our profession, because our profession is so much about our integrity, about accountability, about our own just understanding, equipping ourselves to be experts in certain areas, or to have specialties, and so if somebody is always about the flavor of the moment, or they're so easily influenced by somebody else's thoughts, then that's probably not
It's gonna be a red
going to
light.
be a
It's gonna
good.
at least be a yellow light for you.
That's exactly right. And I obviously then, also look at, do they act like they're one way here at work and then they on
Have
social
this-
media post this other and that's just protection of our culture,
It's
right?
so funny when I hear the word influencer, because every influencer I see is nothing more than a rerun of a previous influencer. And I'm like, actually, you're just copiers. That's the weirdest
Right.
thing. Go back to the group of senior girls, and then I have I want to ask you what you're doing in India. So you really want
Okay.
them to understand who they are. What else are you telling them?
Well, and I think it kind of starts with that though, because I think then it's like, why is that important to understand that? Once you get down to actually understanding what is important in your life, because that's really what your values are.
That's right.
So what is going to be important in your life? And then maybe that we can get to that point of where then they figure out what that means to create a brand for themselves. And what I use internally within my office or in my firm as an example of it is, and because this is very different from me, but for instance, like if I was going through with somebody and it really became very apparent that, sustainability, environmentalism, the planet, those type of things were just incredibly important to them. If they really are interested in that and delving into that, that's probably a whole new service offering for our firm. It may start with something as easy as, their office, they are so passionate about it that they do away with all styrofoam and all paper plates, and they really get people to understand that. But then there's this whole other next level of how do you create a business opportunity with that? Because there's other like-minded people out there with you. And that is, that's what our clients want. Yeah. That's for us. But I mean, in business, you're trying to sell a service, or a product to somebody that's like-minded and has that with you. So the more you understand that, the more you're able to be entrepreneurial with that. The way you're able to be innovative. If maximum efficiency is truly a value of yours, you probably need to be involved somehow in innovation.
Yeah. I love that, how you've tied that. Creating your brand. What gave you that? Where'd you get the creating your brand?
I think some of it had to do with, as we've gone through it as Weaver, as we've tried to go through different marketing campaigns. And I've learned from marketing teams that have come in our own marketing department what it means to have a brand and to truly understand that. And then it just intrigued me to, like, when you're a service company, you are one overall brand of, in our case, 1,300 little brands.
Yeah.
That every day try, and that one brand is trying to represent that. And you're trying to find the right relationships for people with the needs of our clients to align those. And the more I can help somebody define that, I feel like the more they're engaged, and not just engaged in their job, but they're actually they're in it and they're thriving.
Yeah.
And
That's so
they
cool.
love work and it doesn't feel like just a job to them. And then of course they're going to be, somebody's going to see that success and want to take them away, but they're going to be like, no, because this is where my best opportunity is to define success and however I define success.
No, it's so just paying attention. I know I run as hard and fast as I can from the term coach and consultant because of this conversation we had earlier about what I'm seeing in industry. And this analogy I've given to people is, listen, if you want me to work for you, then I'll talk to them about golf. And I'll say, I don't know if you play golf, but I play a lot of golf. And if you ever get to see golfers that are pro golfers on the driving range when they're warming up, they'll usually have one or two guys behind them with their arms crossed. And I said, the guy with his arms crossed is Phil Mickelson's coach. And you never see him say anything. You just see Phil do what he's doing. But occasionally, Phil will turn around and they'll have a conversation. And that coach may say, you just need to move your left foot a little bit, or you need to move your thumb a little bit. And I said, and Phil could crush this guy in golf, but he pays him really well to watch him.
Right.
And I've other clients that I've taken on over the years since we've started, I'm just observing. I said, listen, if you want someone to watch, then you'll pay me well to tell you to move your thumb. You can go hire a coach to give you a test or another Enneagram or whatever, that's fine. But what you need is a guide on the side, not a sage on the stage. And so I'm just going to watch you perform, and then you're going to have to be willing for me to say that was bad.
Right.
Or whatever it is. But again, if you know your brand and you know who you are and you're paying attention, it's amazing the opportunities. Let's finish up with this.
Okay.
tell me what you're doing in India outside of work that has you really has your soul pretty ignited.
Well, so I have been working with Mission India. And it was just one of those times our firm started having the opportunity to work with India right about the same time that my church decided to partner with Mission India as one of our mission projects. Right. And I didn't really put the two together, but it's one of those things where God just keeps doing these things and you're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So this started in, I've been in charge of our learning and development on the tax side for years. And so when the opportunity came to go train in India, which anybody doing business in a foreign country, I will absolutely say, if you really want it to succeed, you have to go there.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot do it virtually. You cannot expect them to have all the skills when you hire them. You have to go there. You have to look them in the eye, and you have to see when they understand, and more importantly, see when they don't understand. And you need to understand cultural differences, to gain that understanding. But I had the opportunity to go at the same time. So I had the opportunity to go for work, to do training there at the same time that our church was invited to a retreat through Mission India to learn more about it. And my husband and I were invited to it. And so I'm like, well, this is interesting because I never thought I would go to India. And now in 1 month, I know I'm going to be going there and I'm going to a retreat to learn about it. Went to the retreat, found out so much more about India and about the beauty of India, but the hopelessness of India, the size of India, the opportunity to share the gospel there, and how Mission India was doing different programs there. So the last couple of times that I've been to India, I've also, even though I've been there for work, I've also been able to meet up with partners there that are doing things and witness what was going on. Everything I have seen, especially in empowering women, one, knowing that women generally are the most influential over their families in the spiritual guidance. I mean, I know that the man is supposed to be the spiritual leader, but it's often,
it is what it is.
It's often the woman that brings it in, and just seeing that over and over again there. Women have no value in India. I had heard a story before I went and then witnessed this over and over again. There's a adult literacy class that Mission India does where they're just, whoever from a village that wants to show up, but it's generally women. They're learning basic life skills, basic financial skills, literacy skills to try to get them by the end of the year to read on a certain grade level. But one of the first things that they do is write. They go around, introduce themselves, and write their names on a board and show it to them. For a lot of these women, that's the first time they've ever seen their name written. They matter so little. Like, they may be the third and fourth daughters. They may, they're the lowest caste systems, all of these things. They mean so little that as an adult, nobody has ever taken their time to write their name. They're illiterate. They can't read it, but they just know when they see those symbols, that's them.
Name. Wow.
That's what we're starting with. And my experience is that over and over again, looking at somebody in the eyes, asking them just to talk about themselves.
What is your name?
What is your name? How can I pray for you? Whatever it is, tell me about your family. These things, nobody takes time to show that they were created. And then when you tell them, you have a God that created you, and he's your father, and you were uniquely created. There's nobody else like you. He has a purpose in your life. I mean, it is a message they have never heard.
Yeah.
And
they've heard just the opposite. You're expendable.
Yes,
you
don't
worth.
matter.
Yeah.
I even talking to you is a waste of my time. I mean, I shouldn't. You're not even worthy of any time, attention, focus, resources, whatever. And
wow,
to be able to share that is just incredible. And then to be able to share that with children early on, is just I sit there and I think, how could I not? I mean, and then when you watch, once they actually have accepted Jesus into their life, oh my gosh, do they have a lot to teach us of what that looks like.
It's a life changer for them.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
it totally transforms their life. They are all in. We mostly don't know what it means to be all in until you've seen people that have nothing now believe they have everything just because of that.
Yeah, they have a name.
They have a name.
Yeah, that's what's so powerful is they just hear it's so cultural sometimes. It's, I'm confident in myself, but this religious thing I can tack on. But
It's part of my identity.
Yeah.
It's not my identity.
right, it's something I can put on my explanation of who I am. For this lady, it's purpose, identity,
Love.
belonging, love, all here right now. It's mine, and she has a name. That's what's so outrageously powerful. Do you see pushback from families when this awakening happens?
Oh, absolutely. Villages, I mean, the villages really are, most of these people will never leave their village. And the village becomes very upset by this. Because it matters, right? I mean, we
Right.
know, this is a camp story, right? I
Right,
mean,
that's
when
right.
when spiritual awakening starts happening and God is being allowed, the enemy is going to do everything he can to
And
fight
we always
that.
knew going home was going to be the hardest thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
And so is theirs. I mean, they're not taken out of that. They now feel a calling to live that life and share it with everybody that's in their village. And so there's absolutely, there's violence, there's isolation, there's abandonment, there's, all of that, but they keep fighting day after day after day. And God keeps winning through that.
Their name has given them a reason to fight regardless of how much they lose.
And transformation is happening. I mean, you see some of these villages now that, it's incredible to see what the home churches look like and how it's spread. And some of the stories are just incredible. I mean, if there's anybody that's interested, I would just say, go look on Mission India's website and
Is it
look
just
at some of their videos.
missionindia.com?
Missionindia.org.
.org, missionindia.org. Wow.
And look at their videos because they have just done an incredible job of filming stories. And it's one of those, Mission India doesn't send missionaries over. They equip
Equip the people there. Yep. No, it's a whole other conversation. I spent about 18 months studying the house church movement around the globe, and it's powerful, but it's a whole other conversation. Laura, this has been fun. I knew it would be when I got up. I was like, I get to talk to Laura again. So thanks for being a
I've
friend.
loved it.
And we're one of those little bitty customers of Weaver. That's always fun. And you've got to see us grow a little bit.
Oh, it's been great.
Yeah. But good times with you. Good luck to you.
Thank
Tell
you.
Nick and Tara hello. And, I guess that'll do it for today. And until the next time, God bless.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's fun. Thanks,
Thanks.
Laura.